Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. Today I'm just going to do a wrap up for the month of October. It just seems like ages ago since I read the books that I'm going to be talking about today. So we'll just try our best. I'm feeling a little bit kind of slumpy, and I think it's just my mood in general, but I read the last two books I read, which aren't in this wrap up because they'll come into November, were really good, really, really good. And I sort of feel like going from a really good audiobook and a really good fiction book at the same time, it leaves it quite hard to find space for another book to impress you as much after that because they were so good. And so I feel like a little bit, I don't know, I'm not reading as well the last few days as I normally would. So yes, well, hopefully that will pass soon. But I'm here today to talk about the books that I read in October, as I said. So I'm going to do my best to remember them. The first one that I read is a library book, which I pre-ordered or reserved, which was Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. And the reason I pre-ordered this was because Love in Colour, which was her first book, was one of my favourite books of last year. So I was really excited when she had another book out. This book is following our protagonist, who's called Kiki Banjo, and it's a campus novel. So it's set at university, and Kiki has a radio show, and on the radio show she gives like romance advice, and she basically calls out a guy called Malachi on her radio show saying that he's trash and women shouldn't be interested in him. And basically she then ends up kissing him, and so the other women think that she just said this so that she could have him to herself, even though that wasn't the case. And then basically to save face, both Malachi and Kiki decide to do fake dating. So that's the trope of this book, so like fake dating to lovers trope. And it's just really good. Like, I gave it 5 stars, although I must admit it has faded somewhat in my memory, but I did really, really enjoy reading it. It's very readable. It's nice to have a book focusing on Black British people, and I really like campus novels, and the romance is like really hot between Kiki and Malachi, and yeah, the dialogue's really well written. I just felt like I really, really enjoyed Bolu Babalola's writing again, as I did with Love and Colour, and I will definitely carry on reading everything that she writes because it was great. So moving on, after that, the next book that I read was another library book that I ordered, and it's harder to remember for me. And this was The Queen of Dirt Island by Donal. So I really like books set in Ireland. I hadn't read any of Donal Ryan's books before, and I'm not sure, I heard this on someone's booktube channel, I'm not sure whose it was. But this focuses around 3 then 4 generations of women in Ireland. So basically we have our main protagonist is Saoirse, who is sort of an adolescent girl, and on the day that she's born, her dad and her granddad get killed in a car accident when they're bringing her home from hospital. And her mum and her grandma and Saoirse all live together, and basically it's about sort of the 3 women, and then when Saoirse becomes a mum, about her daughter Pearl as well. And so the thing I found a little bit annoying about this book is that all of the chapters are exactly the same length. They're all 2 pages long, so it's almost like vignettes, and I felt that it was almost like each chapter, because it follows such a formula, sometimes the chapters could have been longer, but they weren't, because they all had to fit in with the same length, and I found that a bit annoying. And also it meant that every sort of bit of the story was quite short, and the dialogue was great. Like, it's really funny, like the dialogue between Saoirse's mum and her gran, because they like insult each other all the time, but like in a friendly banter way, not in a like serious insults way, and that's really funny, and you can really kind of hear the voices as well. And I I just didn't really click with this that much, which was a shame. So I gave this one 3.75 stars. After that, a book which will undoubtedly be on my favourites book of the year list, and this is Babel by R F Kuang. This is the first book that I've read by her, and it won't be the last. So I have The Poppy War, but I haven't read it yet. And I started reading this. I hadn't really heard loads of hype about it because it was when it had just come out, and I was looking for a new audiobook, and I just really fancied a fantasy audiobook. And as soon as I read the premise of this one, I was like, oh yeah, this one definitely. And it didn't disappoint. And then I went out and got the Waterstones special edition for my birthday, and thank you mum for buying that for me. And yeah, it's really beautiful. It's quite heavy to keep holding up, but I will endeavour to do my best. So this book is another campus novel, but this is set in Oxford University in the Victorian times. And she does put a little note at the beginning of the book to say that there's a couple of things which are factually not quite accurate, but she had to put them in that way for a certain plot device. And I liked the way that she sort of acknowledged that in the beginning of the book. So this is set in Babel, which is the Institute of Translation in Oxford. And we're following 4 students, and the main student that we are following is Robin Swift. So Robin was born in China, and his mum was dying of cholera, like right at the beginning of the book. And as he was probably going to then also die of cholera, a man came in and cured him with silver bars, and then took him as his guardian to the UK. So this man is Professor Lovell, who works at Babel, and he basically gives Robin a really, really strict, tough upbringing and education, and makes Robin be fluent in English as well as Cantonese, and he also makes him learn Latin and Greek, and they learn all about etymology. And basically then when he gets to Oxford, he meets his contemporaries, who are 3 other students from other places around the world who've had the same thing happen to them. And this is really not only about R F Kuang's obvious love of language and etymology, but it really embraces teaching about colonialism and about how the British have stolen so much from other cultures for their own endeavours and for their own benefit. So the reason that they want to know all of these languages is because they use the words, the other languages. They use words from other languages on the silver bars to create power, and they basically are stealing from other cultures and hiding it in making out that they've rescued, in inverted commas, people who would have grown up poor in other countries and brought them to UK and given them this wonderful life, but in doing so have also stolen all of their culture and made them try and forget where they've come from and things. So it's a real sort of, it's got such a sort of deep message about racism and colonialism and capitalism, as well as this great fantasy story about Oxford in the Victorian age, friendship, comradeship, betrayal, and the suspense of how to stop Babel controlling the world, really. So it was really fantastic. Like R F Kuang, like she's still really young. She's in her 20s. She is obviously like such a gifted academic as well as writer. I watched her on the Oxford University's YouTube channel. She gave a Tolkien lecture this year, and I watched her do the lecture, which was an hour long, and I found her really fascinating, and I think her as a person is really inspiring as well. She clearly loves her subject, and she said that she wants all of her novels to be completely different from each other in terms of theme, genre and everything. And so I'm really looking forward to reading the Poppy Wars trilogy and whatever she brings out next as well. So this was a 5-star for me. I really love this book and I'd highly recommend it. The next book is going to be a bit of a tricky one to talk about, but this is very different from Babel. The next one was Orlando by Virginia Woolf, and this is my second Virginia Woolf, having read Mrs. Dalloway a few years ago and really enjoying it. So I buddy read this with my friend Jo Smith, who we do a lot of buddy reads together, and it was a really great one to buddy read. Because there was so much for discussion. So this book covers a really large period of time of several hundred years, and Orlando is our main character. Orlando starts off as a young boy and then becomes a man, and then over the course of the novel, Orlando changes into a woman, and there is no discussion of this. It's just stated as a fact that Orlando has changed into a woman, and everybody who knows them has then just automatically adapted to them being a woman and using female pronouns, and there's been no kind of big debate over gender. It's just happened, and it's the sort of a very early exploration of the idea of gender in English literature, and the fact as well that it covers several hundred years, but Orlando doesn't really age very much. So there's obviously fantastical elements from that point of view in it, and it's basically their journey through life, meeting different people, coming into different relationships, and discussing their trying to be a writer, and just discussing, I guess, sort of the differences in their life between being born a man and becoming a woman. And there's not like tons of plot in this book, even though it's set over quite a long period of time. So there were parts where I found it a little slow, I won't lie, and I needed some things to happen, but then I had a lot of things to discuss because I was reading it with Jo. There were also some really funny bits in the book. There's quite a little bit of satire in there as well, and I found it really enjoyable. I rated it for 4.5, so I rated it really highly, but I just find it really hard to discuss because it's not really a plot-based book and it's more conceptual. And Virginia Woolf is just the most incredible writer. Like, I found that even the bits which I found less interesting, her writing just blew me away constantly because she was so gifted. And I think I'm looking forward to reading more Virginia Woolf, definitely. The next book I followed this up with was The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. So I've been aware of Gabby for quite some time on social media, and I think I was first introduced to her through Oprah's Super Soul series, and this book was brilliant. I really enjoyed this book. So this is quite a small book. It's a spiritual book. I'll tell you a few of the chapters so I can sort of tell you what it's through. So it's about thinking about what your visions are, like what your dreams are, what your hopes are, and also sort of doing some exercises regarding like visualizations and meditations around those. It talks about the sort of the vibes that you give off, the energy that you give off, and also about how you can try and, like, one of the quotes that I really like from the book, which I say to myself all the time, is that she says like I choose peace over this. So like, for instance, if I'm feeling really like angry about something or something's stressing me out, that I can say to myself, I choose peace over this, and try and bring myself back to a more peaceful state of mind. It talks about like enjoying your life, having fun with your life, how the universe appreciates our joy of the gift that is life, and also talks about what to do when there were obstacles in life that we weren't foreseeing, about being guided, and about sort of surrender as well. So it is obviously like full of spiritual teachings and things, and I appreciate that not everybody will be into that. For me, as a person whose whole world revolves around that, then I found that there was some really, really helpful things in this book. The chapters are fairly concise. There's a little summary at the end of each chapter to sort of revisit what was learned in that chapter, and there's also a guided meditation for each chapter that you can either read yourself or you can get from Gabby's website. So I am sure that this is going to be one that I keep reading, and I've written some of the quotes down in my quotes app so that I can go back to them and read them again, and I was really impressed. I really liked this book and I felt like I did get a lot from it. I moved on to a children's book after this because I felt like having read, so Babel was kind of intense in a way of, there's a lot of sort of academic stuff in Babel. Then Orlando was definitely intense, and then The Universe Has Your Back. It wasn't intense, but obviously it's quite pretty deep thinking. And so then I just wanted to read some easier stuff. So then I went for Goodnight, Mr. Tom, which was on my autumn TBR. This is by Michelle Magorian. And this is one that I've had for quite a long time on my TBR. So this follows our protagonist, who is called Willie Beach, and he is from London, and he's grown up with a mum who is super strict and cruel. So she is just like, she is very religious, and she uses religion as a way to control him and scare him, and she's just mean basically. And so when it's wartime, he is taken to the country and he goes to live with Mr. Tom and Mr. Tom's dog. And Mr. Tom lives a very sort of simple country life, but a kind of a really wholesome life, and everyone in the village thinks he's quite grumpy. His wife and infant son died as a consequence of childbirth a long time ago, and he's remained sort of on his own ever since then. And when Willie comes to him, he's pretty traumatized. Like, he wets the bed a lot, he doesn't like change, he's quite scared to interact with anybody, and he starts making friends at school, and he learns to read and write, and he makes a really good friend called Zach, whose parents are sort of theatre actors, and he's quite sort of posh and eccentric, and they just build this really lovely life together. And then his mum wants him back, and so we have to find out. He's obviously much happier with Mr. Tom, and we have to find out what's going to happen when his mum wants him back. So this was really lovely book, and there were some difficult bits to read in it about child neglect and abuse, and it does warm the heart as well. And then very lastly, I read a book which Jane Campbell had recommended called Hello Mum by Polly Dunbar, which is a graphic novel. This was so good. I've got it from the library, so I can't show you, but there aren't a lot of words in it. There's mainly pictures, and it's all about the journey of motherhood. So Polly has 2 young boys, and it's so funny. It really just hits the nail so on the head. About all the bits about being a mum that are like really funny, really lovely, really special, but then also the bits where it's like really frustrating and really hard. There's like pages where she's trying to do something, it just says like mum all over the page, just to kind of for what it's like when you're trying to do anything. And bits where the kids will be like really naughty, and then they'll come in and give her a massive cuddle, and then she just forgets that they've been really naughty. And like where there's really funny, like she's really sleep deprived, so it's her husband, and they look really tired in all the pictures. Life's really crazy. They've got 1 child, and they have like 1 good night's sleep, and then they're like, should we have another baby? And then it's just really funny. So I think if you want to be a mum, or you've got small people in your life, then, or a dad, I think dads as well as equally as much as mums would find this funny and relatable. I just think that her style of drawing and the words that go with the pictures are just really good. And my kids started looking at all the pictures, and there was one part they found really funny where the little boy had tried to get himself dressed, and you kind of watched him putting his pants on, and then he's like done it, and then as he walks off, you can see that at the back they're all tucked in and his bum's hanging out, and the kids found that really funny. So there's bits in there that they enjoyed as well. They didn't understand all of it. The bits where it was like the kids were really stressing the mum out, they didn't really understand what was going on. But yeah, it was just such a fun book, and I think actually that's probably made me smile by far the most when I'm talking about books in this wrap up. So I loved that one. So that was October. It just seems like I really need to make an effort to record my wrap-ups earlier, because it's so hard to remember books that I read 6 or 7 weeks ago in detail. I've always wondered how it would be if I recorded a wrap-up of each book straight after I finish it, and then put those together as a mashup at the end, because I'd obviously remember a lot more of what I wanted to say if I did it at that point in time. But anyway, this is longer than I thought. I didn't think it would be very long because I only read 7 books. And only, 4 of those reduced my TBR, so not too bad. And so far in November, I've already read 6 books in November, so I should probably really do a halfway through wrap up for November. But anyway, so hopefully I'll come out of my slump soon. But let me know what you're reading. Let me know your recommendations from October or November. And I hope that you're having a lovely week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.